Welcome to another episode of Splitting Hairs with Max and Nicky. I'm Max.
And I'm Nicky.
And together we're
Max and Nicky. Today's episode is about the restaurant industry and all of our grievances and problems dealing with being a member of the restaurant industry. Max and I have in the past worked in the restaurant industry for years, and we just wanted to talk about the problems that we had dealing with customers and managers and all the sort of ins and outs of the restaurant industry.
Anyway, I'll let you take it away first, Nicky.
Well, I did write down a few things that I wanted to talk about. So,
I'll just start off first because, I got my notes. Go ahead.
Well, so, the first obvious thing is tipping, but this should be an obvious thing for everybody. Tip your waiters 20% or above, no matter what. It's
the new standard.
Servers, especially in America, they make their living off of tips. They don't make their living off their wages, because in most cities, the wages for wait staff, bar and wait staff, is very, very low. And
in any city, it's at most minimum wage.
Exactly.
It's at most minimum wage.
And so
you can't possibly make money off of that. Although I should say in San Francisco, the minimum wage is quite good.
Yeah, but, cities, or your job will assume that you've made a certain amount in tips, and they will tax your tips based on a percentage.
No, that's not true. Not all the time. Sometimes they'll actually just take into account the actual amount of tips that you receive.
That's true. But the point is, tip your waiters. Even if you had a bad experience with the waiters, I'll tell you, one time, my sister and I, we ate at a restaurant. The server was mean to us. She didn't give us good service. And the normal reaction would be to tip that server less than 20%. But my sister and I actually tipped her 25%, because we wanted to show her that, hey, even though you treated us poorly, we're going to make you feel bad for it by tipping you well.
Yes, but I don't know. That's just assuming. The problem with that is assuming that waiter or waitress understood what you were doing.
But anyway,
and here's the thing. But with that said, I will say,
unless the server is absolutely horrific to you, never tip anything under 15%. But if they're genuinely if they're well-intentioned, tip them 20% or above.
If they're well-intentioned, tip them 20%. If they made a mistake and they're apologetic about it, or even if they're not and they didn't notice, people are human, They're not, infallible.
Servers are human, bartenders are human. Jobs, you make mistakes at jobs all the time.
Right, and I know, especially when you get to fine dining, it's, I understand people pay for a certain kind of service, and I understand
and
that.
I want to get
we'll
to
get
that
into that, but I
just
want to mention my point. I understand that you're paying for a certain type of service, and you're paying a lot for it, but you have to understand people pay tickets to go see concerts for hundreds, thousands of dollars, and the person performing is bound. If they make a mistake, people don't care that much. They know that they're human. And that same goes for somebody that's at a job.
You may
and
not
also,
know.
If anything, this is a job that is, they're not making that much money on, So, although if you're in the fine dining, I suppose you can make quite a bit of money. But in any event, people are human,
And anybody makes mistakes, even your favorite musicians. You just may not notice it, but they noticed. But I guess
that's what I've just said.
Oh, okay, never mind. But yeah, people are human. People make mistakes. You don't know what the circumstances are for that person.
And
at any given moment, they might be totally slammed. Maybe another colleague didn't come into work for some reason or another, and they just were left in the weeds, as they say. And, they might be totally busy. They might not have every minute of every point in your stay in the restaurant to pay attention to you. You have to understand that things like that happen, and treat. I know a server is supposed to treat you well, and they're usually going to do their best to do that. So you should give them the same amount of respect and treat them well.
Right, and it's I remember one time I made a mistake that just snowballed into more mistakes, and sometimes it just, as humans are, it's like that affects you. Especially if that person's sort of important, and like that it sort of affects you in a bad way. I mean, you're trying so hard to be like such a good server that it actually it makes you be a little too doting, and you start to actually mess up in your service. What you normally would do, and you want a server normally to be relaxed, and that makes them a good server. But when you as the customer are constantly judging them on everything they're doing, that's just going to make them do worse. That's just going to make them do worse.
That kind of now I can piggyback onto what my next bullet point was. Or I don't know if I'm using that correctly, but
piggyback off onto.
Piggyback off onto. I still don't think I'm using that expression correctly.
Piggyback off? Well, whatever. Anyway.
Well, that leads us into the next bullet point, which is treatment of servers.
I think
in addition to, this whole tipping situation, you want to treat your server like a human, not just tip them well, but treat them like a human. In the past, I've worked in places where while I'm talking to one customer, somebody's yanking on my arm, trying to get my attention, and it's so rude. It's like, I can't be talking to...
Would you do that in a normal conversation? Like if somebody was having a conversation with somebody in real life, would you yank their arm because you want their attention? That's so selfish.
That's like a child. It's like a child trying to get their mother's attention while she's talking to somebody else. That when you treat somebody like that, you're acting like a child.
And plus, don't do that with a stranger. You don't invade their space too. Don't grab their arm. That's just playing out. That's just that's rude.
And more often than not, servers are the messengers. And say your dinner wasn't prepared to your liking, it wasn't the server's fault, and you shouldn't yell at the server for the mistake, because more often than not, it is not the server's fault. And just take that into consideration. Don't kill the messenger, as they say.
And sometimes people are also. I personally think that at people, I feel like it should be a requirement or something somehow. I know this almost sounds like it kind of sounds like a socialist kind of thing, which wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily, but I feel like at some point in everybody's life, they should take upon some sort of customer service job or something.
No matter what their background was, no matter what their upbringing was like, whether they're rich or poor.
Just like so they can gain some sense of empathy for others.
Working in that industry, but also just makes you a better person, makes you treat others with more respect, just in your everyday life, and you understand how others don't have it as good as you, and they're trying their best, and it makes you understand, like, a server might be having a bad day too. You never know what's going on in their lives, and they may be trying their best to just put on a good face for you, and serving is monotonous sometimes too. You get into a whole routine of doing another
something.
One of my bullet points.
That's
monotony.
Another bullet points is, sometimes a server might have misheard something you said because they're doing the same thing over and over again, and it just they might have said something to you that even though you may have already answered it to them, they just in their practice, like they said that again, and it's like don't judge them for that. I mean, it might have just been like, wow, I've been on my shift for 5 hours now, on my feet for 5 hours, and, you didn't, it just happens. We're human. We're all human,
Yeah, and I mean, and I guess that leads us into the next bullet point, which is the monotony of being a server. And, what makes, or monotony of not just being a server, but being a hospitality worker, You know, something that can get really irritating is you having to put on a smile for every customer that comes in, no matter what, even if you're having a bad day. And the routine of that can get irritating, and you know, you end up making the same jokes to multiple tables, and they'll end up saying the same jokes to you all the time. You'll hear similar jokes from different people, and they think they're the first ones to make that joke.
Right, like
and it's so
if their plate is completely empty after if they ate a good meal and they licked it dry, and they'll say, "I hated it." You know, that's like a common thing that customers will say.
I will say, you know, I don't mind that so much. It's fine. You have to understand.
At least
though,
they're being positive.
If you have to understand though, if that hospitality worker doesn't laugh, you know, really hard at that joke, you have to think, oh, maybe they've heard these jokes before, you know. But you know, by all means, make the joke. You know, at least you're being conversational with the person, and
right.
that's a good thing. That's a good.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, servers do. You know, sometimes they'll hear the same jokes over and over again, but I think it's better at the very least that you're at least helping, trying to brighten up their day and the server.
So you know what? I take it back. Go ahead and make that joke.
Go ahead and make that
even if
joke.
it's a cheesy joke.
Even
go
if
ahead.
it's a cheesy joke, and also, you know, I do appreciate a customer that wants to talk to their server. I suppose that's kind of like it makes it more interesting for the server, you know. But at the same time, like. I should say, though, another thing about it is don't take up their time, you know, because if they're slammed, you know, we don't be so conversational. Be wary of what they have to deal with, actually, you know. Don't take so much time ordering. Make the decision before they get to the table, you know. And if they get to the table and you haven't made your decision, say, oh, we need a few more minutes, because they got a lot of other stuff to do.
Especially if you're a customer who's not ordering. I realize that every customer should be treated the same way, and I really wholeheartedly believe that. But you should know that if you are somebody like myself who would only order a water to drink and maybe a burger at a restaurant or something like that, you got to understand that server's tips, most of it is not coming from you, and so you got to understand, like, you might not be their biggest priority. I mean,
I don't agree with this statement.
Yeah, maybe
I think everyone should be treated.
Yeah, but
like a patron. You know,
I agree. I agree. But look, I once had this couple come in, and all they ordered was water. One of them ordered sparkling water, and we were charging for sparkling water, and they were taking up time and space in a restaurant, a nice restaurant, and while I was very cordial with them, I think it's important for a customer to understand, like, you know, while the atmosphere is nice, somebody doesn't want to spend all their time doting over a customer that's only going to order water.
Of course not, but you just mentioned that you ordered a burger. That's a straight up meal right there, you know?
That's true, but
I mean, that's what you're going to the restaurant for, is particularly their burger. If somebody's going to a restaurant for sparkling water, then that's clearly they could have gone anywhere else.
Well, that's the point, is like, why not just go to a coffee shop or something like that?
Right, I know, but you went to get a burger there.
No, that's true. That's true.
You know?
That's true. But I'm just saying, just because you like the atmosphere of some place doesn't mean you should go there and
sit at the bar.
Sit at the bar, you know?
Sit at the bar.
Sit at the bar. Don't take up
Although sometimes the bar's filled up, and sometimes you're taking up
Sure.
good space, you know, that's like, I mean, come on, you know, you're just getting a sparkling water. I mean, I don't know. It depends on who you're getting it with. If you're a couple getting just a sparkling water, I mean, come on, let's just get real here, you know?
Anyway, I mean, I guess that leads us into the next thing, which is, you know, Max and I don't drink. And, you know, in fact, I personally only drink water.
That's not completely always true. I mean,
for the once in a while, I'll have a root beer. If I'm really tired, I'll have a Coca-Cola. But in general, I drink only water. And this is something that kind of bothers me about the restaurant industry in general, is that a lot of people who work in that industry, they drink a lot, and they celebrate that sort of alcoholism, and I don't like it. We're gonna have another episode in the future about alcohol and alcohol in the media, but to me, it's sort of exclusionary in a way, because they'll celebrate it so much that that's all they'll do on their free time. They'll go out and drink. And
wait, who are they excluding? What are you talking about?
They're excluding me,
No, they're not. They're not saying you can't enjoy.
I can
them.
go, but
I go with them.
It makes it harder for me to relate to those people, because that's all they do for fun.
No, here's the thing. Here's the problem I have with it is, you just made all this money working hard, and now you're going to spend it on alcohol yourself. And it's like, I guess I kind of understand. It's like you're helping the flow of money through the economy, which is kind of good in a way. But I mean, here's the problem I have with it is, you're kind of drowning your.
It's not a good way to deal with the stress of, because there is a lot of stress in dealing in working in the restaurant industry. Actually, I think a study showed that the amount of stress a server experiences on your average day is equivalent to the stress that a brain surgeon experiences.
Right, which shouldn't be a thing.
Which shouldn't
and
be true.
That's a big problem I have with the industry, is that if that's the case, then we're placing way too much stress upon servers. We've created this expectation, this construct. It's this weird deal we've created, this weird contract that basically the server has to be completely immaculate and has to do exactly everything that, it's just this weird thing, that we created. A
server did not go to school for 6 years to become a server. A brain surgeon did,
Right, and plus a brain surgeon is getting paid a ton more money, too.
To be perfect, to be immaculate.
So be
aware.
Lenient with your server.
And so, but here's the problem with, so there's a stress level, and I think it's a problem that, restaurant industry folk, they spend all their time drowning out that stress with drinking. And I think that's a problem. If you ever feel like you need a drink, and I'll talk about this in another episode, but if you ever feel like that, maybe you should seek counsel. It's not normal to be spending all your time drinking and not having fun in any other ways. And restaurant industry people really celebrate drinking a lot. And here's a way that it excludes somebody like me from the picture. One of my former bosses had said that, she didn't think she could get along or didn't like anybody who didn't drink. And I think that's a terrible thing to say. How could you say something like that?
Right. What if somebody was an alcoholic, I mean, basically you're saying to them, if you think, I mean, this is just going on to what we could talk about in another episode, but basically you're saying to somebody who's an alcoholic that you'll never be able to have, if you think that alcohol is the only way to have fun, you're saying to them, you'll never be able to have fun again. Basically.
It's showing them
much fun.
It's also showing people how close-minded you are to the idea of being able to relate to somebody who doesn't drink. There's all types of people in the world. You shouldn't discriminate based on somebody's preferences.
I know, and that's something that's so insignificant. That's the problem I have with it, is there's so much significance placed on something that ultimately, if you were truly relaxed about it and didn't care and let your inhibitions go, and you were a relaxed person due to you drinking alcohol, then you shouldn't care whether or not somebody should drink, actually. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's just another episode.
That's another episode.
Here's the thing. I understand people here's the thing. People do want to let go and just want to escape themselves in a way.
You know what, though?
But hold on. Let me finish.
Okay.
Here's the thing. I think, though, being done with your job at the end of the day is relieving. That's already relieving the stress. Like, you've already dealt with the stress.
Go home, watch a movie or TV show.
Or here's the thing. I don't mind if you want to. Here's the thing. If you want to drink, get a drink in a bar because you want to continue conversing with your friends, I understand that too. And maybe a bar is probably one of the only things that are open at that late time, And sometimes people generally, they like the taste of alcohol. They like a taste of a beer. They want that. It's refreshing to them maybe or something.
We will talk more about this in another episode.
But I know we're talking about the restaurant industry.
Because I do have like some problems with what you just said, Max. But
okay, fair enough. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here. I mean, you have to give some understanding. Can't just be. It's not black and white.
Sure, no, I know it's not.
Here's the thing.
But that is the way a lot of people think is in black and white. They can't see in
sure,
the
I understand,
gray,
but like I would go
with
with friends after work, to the bar as well, and they very well knew that I didn't drink, and they were cool with that,
Sure.
And I'm able to converse with them, and for me, what's relieving of the stress is actually is the stimulating conversations that we have actually, and I think, on a personal level. By not drinking, actually, I'm still able to keep those mental faculties and stimulate my brain in that way and engage with those people to my full capacity. And that's enjoyable to me. That relieves my stress.
But I'll tell you this,
to be honest, just being done with the work day. Being done with the work day is actually the relief from the stress, actually. So getting the drink is actually not relieving the stress.
I would
being
argue
done is
for somebody like
stress,
me, going into a bar after I'm done with a job, a serving job or something like that, that's more stressful. I think bars are kind of stressful to be in. Usually, a lot of times they're really loud and
sometimes they're quiet. Sometimes they're quiet though, and those are fine.
Yeah, in general, and I know this is a personal preference. This is not a problem with anybody else, but I don't like bars. I don't like going into bars in general. Maybe once in a while, if it's like a classic sort of Art Nouveau kind of bar, okay, whatever. I don't know if it's kind of decorated nicely. I think maybe it's cool to go into, but in general, I don't like bars. And a lot of times they're sticky and they're just gross and you don't know where to sit. And a lot of time, sometimes they're crowded and you can't talk over other people.
But sometimes you can find a nice quiet spot and just you're able to talk with your friends.
I'd much rather go to somebody's house and hang out with them there.
I completely agree with you, completely. And actually, in fact, after work often, we would hang out just at the restaurant actually and talk, and that was very fun for me.
Sure, that's fine.
It's the same thing.
Why go somewhere else and spend your money?
Well, that's okay. Here, that is the main big problem I have. Is that a lot of service industry people will complain. I know I'm stereotyping here. I mean, not a lot of them, but a lot of them I knew would complain about not having enough money. And they're like, and I'm living off of a server's, my tips here, which can and can't be good, which is why people should tip well, But here's the thing, people in the industry are just going to they spend it on alcohol, and alcohol is expensive.
Yeah.
It's expensive, so it's like, if you're spending your money, good hard-earned money, and you're having troubles with your money, and you're spending it on alcohol, then I gotta say, you don't really have a right.
Cut out the alcohol.
Cut out the alcohol. You don't really have. You don't have a right to complain about your problems,
your financial problems.
Right, and you just have to cut it out. And if you can't cut it out, then
you have another problem.
Then you have a problem.
An addiction problem.
Yeah. Well, anyway, a lot of this is for another conversation.
Sure.
So I do want to say that there is. It's a lot of it's for another conversation.
And there's a lot of fine lines.
And there's a lot of fine lines and thin lines, and I can understand why some people maybe do want to have a drink to relax and ease the tension, just because sometimes people have anxiety about being in conversation. But that's just I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic.
I know, but that's another conversation for another episode, because I don't agree with what you just said.
Let's just talk about it in another episode.
We'll talk about it in another episode. So another one of my bullet points is talking about just the whole and we touched on this a little bit, is the whole formality that goes into being a hospitality worker. There's this expectation for a server to be perfect, and what's the point? Why would you want to place that expectation on somebody else Why do things have to be so formal? Even at a fine dining restaurant, you're going somewhere for the service, but I truly can't wrap my brain around why somebody would want to eat in such a formal, under such formal circumstances. Me, when I'm eating, I like to relax. Eating is one of the most relaxing things that you can do. You know, sure, there's something to be said about good manners, but, you know, when there's stress from the server, it creates stress for you.
I know, but ideally in a formal setting, you wouldn't notice the server, actually. I mean,
okay, but here's the thing.
Or at least not
in a formal setting, I would be like, look, man, with a server, I would want that server to relax. It would help me relax, actually. It'd help me enjoy.
I know, but you didn't not just hear what I just said?
I know you would not notice the server, but you would notice them greeting you and talking about the food and stuff.
I know, but they could seem relaxed, and it'd be formal,
Sure.
Just like a butler, I mean, he seems relaxed.
I guess. I mean, a butler, I just think, no, because a fine dining place, a server at a fine dining place is going to be markedly different from a server at, your run-of-the-mill.
Markedly.
I just said that.
Market, right.
Different from, a server at some sort of diner,
Yeah.
The service is going to be different. And I just think if you're going out to eat, why not keep it casual? Why do things got to be formal? It's not, for me, it's not fun. Maybe it's fun for other people, but for me, it's not fun to be in such a uptight situation. I would like it to be relaxed and casual.
True. I mean, but here's the thing. Okay. Well, I mean,
the food is the most important part about it.
One of the restaurant groups that I worked for in the past, their main restaurant, it was what was cool about that place was it's actually a very popular place, and their standard for food was very high. But the waiters and the staff, they weren't like super formal, and uptight. They were actually relaxing to be around, though,
Yeah, exactly.
And so I thought that was a good, and which is why I don't know if I would consider them fine dining, but they definitely had a standard as far as food goes.
So what's the point of fine dining? I just don't get it.
I guess it's just part of it.
It's more tradition.
I guess fine dining is just maybe like an experience to have, like, just to be like, oh my God, that was an interesting experience.
Exactly, I mean? But it's not necessarily relaxing.
It's not necessarily the best. For personally, it's not my favorite place to be at,
Yeah, and it's sort of a kitschy kind of thing in a way. At least it's become that way. I feel that a fine dining place has become a kitschy kind of thing. I heard this one guy before, he worked in this place where if you dropped a plate or a glass on accident, and that happens with everybody, if you dropped a glass and it broke, you were fired. And nobody wants to deal with that kind of stress. A customer, being a customer, I don't want to see somebody go through that kind of stress, It's just not healthy. And that kind of goes in line with just the whole idea of wine service, proper wine service. I don't get this thing. It's purely for tradition, and somebody having to present a bottle of wine at a table and pouring the wine for customers. Who cares about that? I mean, like, why? If you just set the wine bottle at the table, like, people are more than happy to pour it themselves for the most part. I mean,
yeah, but at the same time,
it's nice to be served. But if I were to drink, if I drank and I drank wine, I would, I wouldn't want to take the chance of somebody pouring in my glass. It might accidentally spill on me.
It's true. Sometimes it's a little bit of a difficult situation.
It makes me stressed out.
Sometimes, I mean, the restaurant I worked at last, sometimes it was difficult to get in a certain position to pour the wine, and so you had to. It might. Yeah, you're right, Nicky. It was more difficult to pour the wine than for somebody else.
I don't want the server to take a chance.
Right.
Take the chance of not spilling on me. I'd rather just us at the patrons at the table do it ourselves.
Sure,
You know,
right,
it's more
and part of-
relaxing for everybody.
Right,
you
and
know?
part of the formality also is like if you see their wine glass empty or near empty, you refill their glass. But it's like
that's also goes along with wanting to sell more drinks. You know,
sure,
I mean,
but
so
the formality I'm saying is that you should refill it, or you should ask them. Like, I guess you say, "Would you like more?" and then refill it for them. But it's like,
who cares?
Who cares?
Know?
Like,
if they want more,
they want more, then they'll
more.
pour more. But then that's like extra stress on the waiter to think like, oh. You know, sometimes you're like...
The waiter always has to be looking out to make sure that their wine glasses are
But it's not
full,
just that. It's also like, what if they're in conversation with someone, but you're like trying to maintain that formality of wanting to make sure that their glass is full, and it's like, I don't want to interrupt their conversation.
It's just a terrible situation to be in.
Yeah.
It's stressful for all parties. And, you know, let's just do away with that, you know, that tradition. You know, it's very dated, and there's no need for it. I don't think. I mean, I understand.
Well, here's the thing: I understand presenting the bottle of wine to somebody because they do need to see that that's the bottle.
Sure, but you know, even opening a bottle of wine at a table and having to do it in midair without the support of a table, you know, I guess it's easy for some people, but the fact that there's a chance of something falling on the floor, you know, it's...
No, I understand opening it at the table because...
No, but
the idea is
why
like,
can't it be opened on the table as opposed to... It has to be opened in midair. You know, you can't be touching the table.
Yeah, I see.
Why can't you use some support? Who cares?
It's true.
It's like the same thing about like bringing a tray of drinks to a table and not being able to set it down. I mean, I guess I get it because the tray might be dirty, but it's like, you know, if it's easier to carry drinks in your hands to a table, why can't you just do that? Why does there have to be the added stress factor of having to carry it on a tray, balancing drinks on a tray?
Well, I mean, sometimes the tray is better because there's more than two drinks, you know?
Sure, but, you know, the last time I worked as a server, you weren't allowed, even if you only had two drinks, you had to bring it on a tray, you know? It's like, it's easier for me to grip it in my hands than balancing it on a tray.
I'm saying if it was two, yes.
I know, but... but that's what I'm trying to say is like, you do whatever's easier. Why
totally. I understand. Sometimes like I will have brought a beer that you have to pour the beer in a bottle and then you pour it in a glass. And you have to pour that in a certain way so that you don't create too much of a head. But you have to bring that on a tray, right? Why are you shaking your head no?
I'm just agreeing with you. I just don't like it.
And so I had my own way that my boss had taught me, which was using my thumb and my fingers. Anyway, to hold the tray and the bottom of the glass at the same time, the base of the glass. And then you kind of tilt that. And people were very impressed when I was able to do it well. And I did that well, I thought.
But it's
which is kind of cool.
But it's stressful.
It's a little stressful because if I
stress.
didn't have the tray, it would be so much easier to just hold the glass at an angle and then pour it.
Who cares about impressing somebody with that anyway? It's like,
well, I mean, it's better for tips.
I guess it's better for tips.
People are impressed.
But why
by the littlest things?
But why would you even care about that? Like, honestly,
because
unless somebody's doing a magic trick for you.
Frankly, I hate to be ageist here, but old people, they don't know the standard tipping nowadays. And so if you can impress them with something like that, then they're more inclined to tip you better.
But one time Max actually sang at a table and the people were impressed by that. And I feel like that's a cooler thing to be impressed by. Not how well you can pour a beer into a glass.
That was a different whole situation altogether. That was like the last people of the night that was... I had worked at a restaurant that was in a jazz center, and those people had been the producers of the show. Anyway, that was a whole different situation. But
anyway, the point is all this formality.
Hold on, I do want to say another formal thing. By the way, is the drinks have to be at the table before any food gets to the
Oh,
table.
sometimes the bartender is slammed and they can't make the drinks
I know,
beforehand.
I know, I
It's such a
understand.
stupid idea. As long as they have water, it should be fine, you know?
Right, but even still, like sometimes like at our restaurant, our last restaurant, we had these chips that were already made beforehand. And it's like those are gonna get out
Take
before
you know, a minute to come out, you know?
minute to come out. And if it's like, you know, I guess I understand water being at the table. That's like kind of the first thing that should be there, I suppose. I kind of understand that, but at the same time, it's like if the chips get there beforehand, who cares too? You know, the water will get out there fairly soon after, usually. But if there were cocktails, then they need to be ready. It's like, you know, if you're waiting too long, no, that's another situation. But if it comes out just soon after, who cares? You know?
Yeah,
Who cares?
it's no big deal, no big whoop, you know? Anyway, the point is just, you know, all this formality, it's too stressful to deal with. It's not relaxing. When you go to a restaurant, you want to be relaxed. You want to eat, you know, enjoy. You want to enjoy yourself. And so...
Now, with that said, sometimes people do like their cocktails before they eat, in which case, don't order the food yet then, you know? Order your cocktail, and then...
Sure, but
anyway,
but that's besides the point, you know?
I'm just saying,
Just
you know.
all this formality, I don't get it. I don't like it.
I know, actually, by the way, the restaurant I was working in, by the way, as I said, it was in a jazz center, and people often had to get to a show. And so if they wanted their meal expedited a little bit, you know, faster, you know, if they wanted things more efficient, then they really shouldn't care about the formality, because then it would take longer because the drinks take longer.
Okay.
Anyway, that's just my 2 cents. So,
Anyway, I mean...
so anything else, Nicky? on
Yeah,
this?
there's one more thing that grinds my gears, and that's chefs. Now, I'm not saying all chefs are like this, but often the head chef of a restaurant can be a real big jerk. And, you know, I don't like it. You know, they say, if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. Well, I say that to most chefs in restaurants. Not all of them are like this, but a lot of them are. They seem to be stressed out all the time in there, and they can't
clearly
handle
can't
the
handle
heat.
the heat.
They tell you, if you can't deal with me yelling at you, then get out of the kitchen. But no, if you can't deal with the stress, and if you can't talk to somebody in a calm and collected manner, then you get out of the kitchen, quit your job, because you can't clearly handle the stress. You know?
Right, and that's not to say that those cooks and chefs don't handle a lot of stress. I mean, it's very stressful back there. It really is. I totally understand it. But, you know, I had a friend...
This is why you have to truly enjoy what you do.
Yeah, you have to truly enjoy what you're doing. I had a friend...
To be a chef, yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend, or I have a friend who's... What?
Sorry, I just realized what time it was. Anyway, go on.
Oh, I have a friend that is a cook and chef, and anyway, he's the most zen about cooking. I mean, he's so nice too, and he would never yell or get stressed out about anything. And I was like, he's the prime example of because he truly enjoys the zen of cooking. It's what he told me. I was like, how come? He knows that chefs can be jerks sometimes, and he's like, you know, if it's busy, you got to get in your zone.
Get in your zone.
Get in your zone.
Enjoy the
and
busyness.
it's like, I know people...
You want it to be busy.
Yeah,
As a chef, you want it to be busy.
I know waiters are telling me certain things need to come out, but it's like, I'm going to do the best I can possibly do and help them out, but like, I'm not going to compromise the meal, and when it comes out,
The
it'll come out.
quality of the meal, yeah.
And so and he just knows the zen of it, you know, and and the zone of it. He gets into it, and he's the nicest guy. And I just don't know why, if he can be like that, then why can't
all
everyone
chefs
be like that? Yeah.
And so the point is, if you're a chef, you know,
And he was good. By the way, he was a good.
if you're a chef and you're a jerk, then maybe you shouldn't be a chef, you know, or you better change, you know, your attitude, because people are not going to like you. You want your wait staff to like you. Because if your wait staff likes you, they'll want to do right by you. They'll want to sell your product better, and they'll enjoy the food you make more, you know?
Now, I understand also, it's like sometimes things can get stressful. People are human, and sometimes you might snap at somebody.
But if you're like that more often than not, then there's a problem.
Right. If you're out like that more often than not, then that's a little bit of a
Then,
problem.
as I said before, you should seek counsel.
I guess.
Anyway,
You don't need to seek counsel necessarily.
There's one more thing, and
change your
this is just a
attitude.
little thing, and I get it, but it's kind of an annoying thing, and it's indecisive customers. If a server comes up to a table and you as a customer are not ready to order by the time that the server gets to you, just tell them, you know what, give me a few minutes and come back. Never keep the server there and say,
I said that beforehand.
oh, did you say that?
I mentioned that.
You said, no, I don't think you did. You said, don't have them stand there doing nothing, waiting for you to decide on your order. Did you say that already?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then I wasn't listening, I guess.
I mean, well, basically to reiterate what Nicky just said it right there. Yeah. They're busy. They got a lot of stuff to do.
I guess you did say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, maybe I'm just so passionate that I want to read.
No, Nicky
some of
has
these
these notes that he wrote down in his phone, and like me in a previous episode, he has to get to all of them. Even though
Although
we already
Max
covered them.
typed up all the notes, his notes he had typed up and word for word in the previous episode.
Well, I didn't, not word for word.
Some of it.
Some of it was maybe.
Anyway, the point is the
final
restaurant
word
industry,
is-
it's stressful, it shouldn't be. It's food.
I guess
it should be enjoyable.
The restaurant industry is
It's unnecessarily stressful
it's unnecessarily stressful, and there's too much expectations placed on it.
on the people working in the restaurant.
People working in it, and it makes them stressed out and maybe do things that are unhealthy for them as well. And the
It's
final word is
unhealthy for everybody. Just relax.
I don't know. You don't need to say it like that, but I think
Hey, relax.
okay. He's trying to be like Rocky Balboa.
And he says to Adrian, "Hey, relax."
Anyway,
The point is, relax. It's food. Enjoy yourself.
food is one of the best things that you could have, and that's personally one of my favorite things to do in the world is to go to restaurants with
One of
friends
my favorite things,
and
I think,
enjoy a meal and good conversation.
besides laughing and listening to music, I think my favorite thing to do in life is eating. And I want to be relaxed when I do that.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Thank you for listening to another edition of Splitting Hairs with Max and Nicky.
Please tune in next time.